Hello, my name is Alyssa Pearson, and I'll be talking about our paper, Weighted Buffered Voronoi Cells for Distributed Semi-Cooperative Behavior. As we integrate multi-robot systems into our everyday life, we need these robots to interact in complex, cluttered environments. Some applications include delivery robots, warehouse robots, and personal mobility robots. Across these applications, robots need to interact with other humans and robots, which may have varying levels of cooperation. Our goal is to design distributed control algorithms that account for these semi-cooperative interactions. Our paper introduces the weighted buffered Voronoi cell, illustrated in the video on the right. These cells encode the cooperation of other agents, such that selfish agents receive larger cells than non-selfish agents. We utilize social value orientation, a metric from social psychology, to encode the relative cooperation preferences of other agents. We then demonstrate how these cells can guarantee distributed, collision-free navigation within a complex environment. Using our algorithm, selfish agents take shorter paths to their goal than non-selfish agents. Our work draws inspiration from a number of different works within multi-robot systems, primarily in Voronoi-based methods, multi-agent collision avoidance, and social interactions. In particular, we draw inspiration from the previous work of buffered Voronoi cells, as well as design tools from obstacle-aware Voronoi cells in the design of our weighted buffered Voronoi cells. As a quick primer, Voronoi cells are defined as all points Q that are closer to an agent Pi than any other agent Pj. Here we have illustrated the Voronoi cell of the purple agent. Buffered Voronoi cells incorporate a weight in their cell definition, which allows us to include a safety radius for each agent and ensure that robots with physical extents do not collide. Here, the buffer is the combined extent of the two agents, as defined by the weight on the left. If the two agents Pi and Pj were to move to the edges of their cells, the buffer prevents the robots from colliding. We can use these buffered cells in guaranteeing distributed collision avoidance when groups of robots must move through the environment. If each robot constrains its control policy to only actions within their cell, no robot will collide. Buffered Voronoi cells consider that all agents cooperate equally. However, it may be the case that not all agents are equal in their cooperation. Some egoistic agents may consider themselves to be more important than other agents. Our approach allows us to adjust the relative boundaries between the agents, giving egoistic agents larger relative cells by using the weighted buffered Voronoi cell. In practice, these larger cells mean the more selfish agents are less likely to yield than less selfish agents. Here, we illustrate a position-swapping game among 4 agents. Agents choose control policies that drive towards their goal location. When they reach the edge of their weighted buffered Voronoi cell, they yield by exploring with a right-hand rule. As we can see in the video, the smaller cells of the altruistic agents in blue force them to yield before the prosocial agent in purple and the egoistic agent in red. The egoistic agent, with its larger cell, is allowed to take a direct path to its goal. To assign these relative cooperation preferences, we employ social value orientation, or SVO. SVO is a metric from social psychology that measures how much an agent weights the reward to themselves versus the reward to another agent in a social dilemma. The classic experiment is where you are asked to split $100 with a stranger. You may choose to give the stranger the entire $100, which is an altruistic preference as the other agent receives the entire reward. You may decide to split it 50-50. This corresponds to a pro-social preference, which equally weights the reward to self versus other. Finally, you may decide to keep it all. This is an egoistic preference with only a reward to self. We encode these social preferences within the weight of the weighted buffered Voronoi cell definition as shown. The weights are designed to also include the radius and extent of each robot for collision avoidance guarantees. For more details, please see our paper. Within our paper, we also detail how we can guarantee collision avoidance, which is outlined here briefly. First, by definition, the weighted buffered Voronoi cells are non-empty. Second, the minimum distance between any 2 points in 2 different cells is greater than the radius of the agents defining those cells. Cells are non-overlapping and unique, such that a point in the environment can only belong to one cell. And finally, with all of these lemmas combined, we can guarantee collision-free navigation when all agents choose control actions that map within their cells. As a distributed algorithm, it scales well to many agents. Our first simulation is a position swap game with 50 agents. We ran 100 randomized trials and did not observe deadlock, with all agents reaching their goal locations in all trials. The shade of the cell indicates the relative SVO preference. As we can see, agents use their weighted buffered Voronoi cell to navigate towards the goal locations indicated by the stars. As interactions happen, agents use the right-hand rule to explore and avoid deadlock. We can compare the performance of the robots based on their relative SVO preferences. As agents become more selfish, they take shorter paths to the goal location. Here we indicate this as the additional distance traveled by a robot versus the shortest possible path to its goal location. Additionally, we can look at the normalized time to goal and see that as the agents become more selfish, the time to their goal decreases. Our next example considers the circle swap game, where agents must swap positions with the agent directly across the circle. Notice that the egoistic agents in red have cells slightly closer to the center than the non-egoistic agents. In this scenario, the egoistic agents rush to the center and become gridlocked inside the circle while the other agents traverse around the outside. So while they will ultimately travel a shorter path, they must wait for the other agents to move before reaching their goal. Over the randomized trials, where we randomized the SVOs of each position, we did not observe any deadlock, and all agents eventually reached their goal locations. We can compare the performance of each agent relative to their SVO preferences by again comparing the additional distance over the shortest path, as well as the normalized time to goal. As with our first simulation, more egoistic agents travel shorter paths relative to the prosocial and altruistic agents. However, due to the gridlock phenomenon observed in the circle swap game, the egoistic agents take longer to reach their destination than the prosocial and altruistic agents. Overall, this paper introduces the weighted buffered Voronoi cells, which allows us to encode social value orientation into the definition of the cell to create this semi-cooperative behavior. In addition, we can use these weighted buffered Voronoi cells for distributed collision-free navigation. Thank you for listening to this talk. For more details, please see our paper or contact the authors by email.